Hey, good morning, everybody. How is everyone doing? So, what we're going to be doing in this class is we're going to be talking about speaking. But before we do that, we're going to do a little bit of the listening homework. I told you guys to do the listening homework for test number 4 in the volume 2 book of the practice test. We obviously don't have time to go through all of those, but I thought it would be useful to go through 2 of those. So we're going to go through a conversation and we're going to go through a listening passage. A lecture. Sound good, everybody? Sound good? Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. So I'm going to take notes for the conversation, and I want you to kind of compare your notes to my notes and see if we are kind of on the same wavelength here.
Listen to a
Can you guys hear that? Okay, here we go.
conversation between a student and a professor.
So, Professor Tibbets, your note said that you wanted to see me about my Hemingway paper. I have to say that grade wasn't what I was expecting. I thought I'd done a pretty good job.
Oh, you did. But do you really want to settle for pretty good when you can do something very good?
You think it can be very good?
Absolutely.
Would that mean I could get a better grade?
Oh, sorry. It's not for your grade. I think you could learn a lot by revising it.
You mean rewrite the whole thing? I'm really swamped. There's deadlines wherever I turn, and I don't really know how much time I could give it.
Well, it is a busy time with spring break coming up next week. It's your call, but I think that with a little extra effort, you can really turn this into a fine essay.
No, yeah. I mean, after I read your comments,
Okay, so let's talk about what I'm writing down. So the reason why he visits is he's not really sure. You know, he knows it's about the paper, but he doesn't know exactly what's going on. But then we quickly realize that the professor says you can revise it, not to get a better grade, but to learn more. Another thing that I've noticed is he's kind of hesitant. Did everyone see his tone? Well, right? He's kind of like that, right? He doesn't exactly want to go along with his plan, but I can imagine at the end he's going to be convinced. Let's see.
I can see how it tries to do too much.
Yeah, it's just too ambitious for the scope of the assignment.
So I should cut out the historical part?
Yes, I would just stick to the topic. Anything.
Now, this is important because we're getting into the details of why the professor didn't really like it. And what he did is he basically did too much. You know, he didn't follow directions exactly.
Unrelated to the use of nature imagery has no place in the paper. All that tangential material just distracts from the main argument.
I never know how much to include. You know, where to draw the line.
Tell me about it. All writers struggle
Tell
with
me
that
about
one.
it.
But it's something you...
So when she says, tell me about it, what is she really saying? Yeah, I agree. I'm with you. You know, they might ask that question. You know, they might say, what does the professor mean when she says, tell me about it, right? And it's going to be, oh, yeah, you know, the professor kind of agrees with the student's point.
can learn. That'll become more clear with practice. But I think if you just cut out
The stuff about the history. But if I cut out those sections, won't it be too short?
well, better a short, well-structured paper than a long paper that's poorly structured and wanders off topic.
Ooh, sounds like
So
me.
all I have to do
I want to
is
marry
delete
this woman.
those
Wow, I always say this. I would rather have a short, grammatically correct essay than one that's long and full of mistakes.
sections.
Well, not so fast. After you cut out those sections, you'll have to go back and revise the rest.
Now, again, don't get complacent here. You know, they might ask questions about this. You have to revise after you cut out, so it's not just cutting out.
To see how it all fits together. And of course, you'll have to revise the introduction
Did you hear her say, and of course? That's a new idea, right? Have to revise the intro as well. Listen for those new ideas.
too, to accurately describe what you do in the body of the
Oh my God, I want to marry this woman. It sounds exactly how I talk. Your introduction should map out what you do in your paper.
paper. But that shouldn't be too difficult. Just remember to keep the discussion focused. Do you think you can get it to me by noon tomorrow?
Wow.
And then don't forget, like this, they might ask a question about this, so be careful. So she wants it basically by noon tomorrow, which is pretty insane when you think about it, because she's not going to edit the grade and she's asking the student to do it on his own volition, only to learn more. This is maybe the most idealistic teacher I've ever heard of in my life.
Wow.
How does this student feel? Wow. Not sure about that.
I have so much, but I'll try.
Okay, good. Do try. But if you can't, we'll shoot for after spring break, okay?
Okay. So as you can see, the student was a little bit hesitant throughout, but then he kind of came on board, but then he was a little hesitant about the time. Okay, so any questions about my note-taking here? Grade is down. No, but you could have done better. No grade improvement. Do it to learn more. I'm too busy. Yeah, the paper does too much. Cut out the history part. But then won't it be too short? Well, that's better. And then you need to revise the intro so that it maps the organization. By noon tomorrow, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Okay. Why does the professor ask the man to come to her office? Well, clearly this is about, redoing the paper, right? To encourage the man to revise the paper. Why does the man hesitate before agreeing to the professor's request? Because he's busy, right? Isn't he busy? He feels overwhelmed by all his schoolwork. What is the professor's main criticism of the man's paper? It's just too busy, too much going on. So it included unnecessary information. All right. Next one. Why does the professor suggest that the student change the introduction, again, to map the organization? Didn't I say don't fall asleep? I said don't fall asleep right here. It's not finished. They might ask a question about it. Right? Why does the professor suggest that the student change to make it less repetitive? No. To more clearly state the man's point of view? Maybe. To correct, that's the trap answer, by the way. To correct spelling and grammar? No. To reflect changes made elsewhere in the paper? Yes. Because remember, it's supposed to, if he cuts out the historical part, doesn't he have to remove that from the introduction? Because the essay no longer talks about the historical part. Okay. Listen to track 102. Let's go ahead and listen.
Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
I never know how much to include. Where to draw the line.
Tell me about it.
Aha, I was right. I predicted it correctly. Tell me about it. What does she really mean? She agrees, right? So she understands. All right, let's take any questions. Guys, check out my pronunciation. Are you ready for this? Hey, Shripriya, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Actually, I had raised my hand right in the beginning. I wanted to ask you if we can do the lecture about the opera.
You guys want the opera lecture? Is that what you guys want?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, what number is it? What track number? 107?
107.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. I suppose we
Thank
could do it. No problem. Okay. Hey, Alina, how are you?
Hi, Greg. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, what's up?
Yeah, I want to ask about the second question. I feel like this guy in the beginning, he just didn't want to do this. Not because he's busy or something, but he couldn't get a point of doing this.
I think he specifically said he's busy. So what did you choose?
Yeah,
D?
but in the end, yeah.
You chose D?
I chose C, actually.
Do you have any evidence that he's unclear about what the professor wants him to do? Is there any evidence?
In the beginning, he wasn't sure, but then he cleared it out, and then in the end he said that he is overwhelmed by all his schoolwork.
Yeah, I just think the one that's most justified is B. I think he just feels like there's so much going on in his life, and they actually say that twice, don't they? They say it at the end.
Yeah,
as well, right?
in the end. Yeah, it's true in the end.
Yeah, so I think that has just more justification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
See. Thanks.
All right, guys. So we're doing the opera one. Okay, we can do the opera one. Dana has a question. Hey, Dana.
Hello.
Hey.
So since you're not going to do except one lecture, I'm just going to ask you about I found them all easy except lecture 2.
Lecture
Because
2 is what that about?
Yeah, it's about the science, the DNA and stuff, biology.
Oh, you
I've
mean
never
lecture
taken it.
1. You mean lecture 1.
Lecture 1, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second one. I've never taken a biology course in my life, so I kind of get lost in the information. Actually, I got 2 wrong over here, and these were my only mistakes. So I got overwhelmed with the information.
I guess
And when
my point would be, even if you've never taken a biology class, does that matter as long as you're using the techniques?
well, I used them, but I overcrowded myself with the
Yeah,
information,
remember the
right? About
detail
the
is not
DNA.
as important as you think, especially technical detail. All right, let's listen to both of these. Okay, you guys have convinced me. All right, so here's the DNA one. Let's go ahead and listen to this. Remember,
Listen,
in the beginning, what I'm looking for is main idea.
listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
As we learn more about the DNA in human cells and how it controls the growth and development of cells, then maybe we can explain a very important observation, that when we try to grow most human cells in a laboratory, they seem programmed to divide only a certain number of times.
Boom, right there. First piece of information that matters. So whenever we try to grow the cells, they're basically limited. Notice how I was able to rephrase that idea with only 2 words.
Before they die. Now, this differs with the type of cell.
This differs with the type of cell. Now, did you hear say now? Should I pay attention when they say now? Yes or no? Now. Yes, of course. That's new information. So basically, it is different according to kind or type. It doesn't really matter. Let's just write down kind. Now, she's probably going to give an example. Let's see.
Some cells, like nerve cells,
Like nerve cells.
only divide 7 to 9 times.
So obviously write down this stuff. So just write down in 7 to 9.
In their total life. Others, like skin cells, will divide many, many more times.
So she's just doing a contrast here between nerve cells and skin cells. So a lot.
But finally, the cells stop renewing themselves and they die. And in the
And.
cells of the human body itself, in the cells of every organ, of almost every type of tissue in the body, the same thing will happen eventually.
Nah, who cares? That's not new information. Who cares, right? It happens everywhere.
Okay,
Okay, did you hear the pause and the okay? Here comes new information, everybody.
you know that all of a person's genetic information is contained on very long pieces of DNA called chromosomes.
Now, don't try to spell the word chromosomes, right? Just say DNA on C. Okay? You could even say the word long if you want to. You don't try to spell the word chromosome because remember, on the real TOEFL, they're going to give you a slide that says the word chromosome on it. Okay? Obviously, that's difficult for us to do, but on the real TOEFL, they do that. Okay?
46 of them in a human cell. That's 23 pairs of these chromosomes of various lengths and sizes.
Now, that's kind of new information. So we know 46, but I mean the whole various lengths and sizes. All right, next. So hear the pause? Hear that pause? That's a very long pause.
Now,
Now. I could be a TOEFL actor, I think. ETS, are you hiring? I could be on one of these.
if you'll look at this rough drawing of one of them, one chromosome about to divide into 2, you'll see that it sort of looks like, well, actually it's much more complex than this, but it reminds us of a couple of springs linked together.
Okay, right there. So springs connected. Now, you'll notice she said in reality it's more complex than this. So they might ask a author's purpose question. Why is she using the word springs? Well, she's trying to make a complex thing seem less complex, right?
2 coiled up pieces of DNA. And if you stretch them out, you'll find they contain certain genes, certain sequences of DNA that help determine how the cells of the body will develop. When researchers looked really carefully at the DNA and chromosomes, though, they were amazed. We all were to find that only a fraction of it, maybe 20 to 30%, converts into meaningful genetic information. It's incredible. At least it was to me. But if you took away all the DNA that codes for genes, you'd still have maybe 70% of the DNA left over That's the so-called junk DNA, though the word junk is used sort of tongue-in-cheek.
What does tongue-in-cheek mean? They might ask a question about that. What does the author mean by tongue-in-cheek? What do they mean by that? Is she being serious or kind of like a joke? It's kind of like a joke. Tongue-in-cheek means, they're just having fun with it. It just means like, it's just, it's not literally junk. It's not literally junk. It's kind of like a joke.
And if this DNA doesn't make up any of the genes, it must serve some other purpose.
It must have some purpose, right?
Anyway,
should I start taking notes, yes or no? Is this new information? Yes, it is.
if we examine the ends of these coils of DNA, we'll find a sequence of DNA at each end of every human chromosome called a telomere. Now, a telomere is a highly repetitious and genetically meaningless sequence of DNA, what we were calling junk DNA. But it does have an important purpose. It's sort of like the plastic tip on each end of a shoelace. It may not help you tie your shoe, but that little plastic tip keeps the rest of the shoelace, the shoestring, from unraveling into weak and useless threads. Well, the telomeres at the ends of chromosomes seem to do about the same thing, protect the genes, the genetically functional parts of the chromosome, from being damaged. Every time the chromosome divides, every time one cell divides into two, pieces of the ends of the chromosome, the telomeres, get broken off. So after each division, the telomeres get shorter. And one of the things that may happen after a while is that pieces of the
we can make an inference here. Remember, these cells tend to die over time, and every time they divide, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So I wonder if the cell dies once it gets so short that it's basically nothing. Let's see.
genes themselves get broken off of the chromosomes. So the chromosome is now losing important genetic information and is no longer functional. But as long as the telomeres are a certain length, they keep this from happening. So it seems that by looking at the length of the telomeres on specific chromosomes, we can actually predict pretty much how long certain cells can successfully go on dividing.
See,
now,
told
there
you.
are some cells that just seem to keep on dividing regardless, which may not always be a good thing if it gets out of control. But when we analyze these cells chemically, we find something very interesting, a chemical in them, an enzyme called telomerase.
Now let's stop right here.
A
lot of people would get tired and give up. I see it all the time. Oh, it's too much technical information. But if you actually look what I'm writing down, am I writing down anything technical? No, I'm writing down, I know the handwriting's ugly, but I'm not writing down telomerase or chromosome or anything like that. I'm just writing down like kind of simple ideas.
An enzyme called telomerase. As bits of the telomere break off from the end of the chromosome, this chemical, this telomerase, can rebuild it.
Wow.
Can help reassemble the protective DNA,
Wow.
the telomere, that the chromosome has lost. Someday we may be able to take any cell and keep it alive, functioning and reproducing itself essentially forever through the use of telomerase. And in the future, we may have virtually immortal nerve cells and immortal skin cells or whatever, because this chemical, telomerase, can keep the telomeres on the ends of the chromosomes from getting any shorter.
So as you can see, don't focus too much on the technical information. Just like, oh, she's shocked, she's amazed, she loves it. Use length to predict, various, losing important, keep alive, future, immortal. Most of these ideas are relatively straightforward. So let's take a look. What does the professor mainly discuss? She discusses chromosomes, telomeres, telomerase, stuff like that. Why most human cells cannot keep dividing, how human chromosomes differ, how various types of human cells divide at different rates, how genes control human development. Okay, what do you think about this one? What do you guys think? To be honest, I would probably skip this one. I'm not saying I'm not leaning toward an answer. To me, this doesn't really jump out at me, but the problem is on the TOEFL, you cannot skip. So whenever this happens, you have to do POE. What is definitely wrong? Isn't C definitely wrong? And then B focuses on different rates. Again, that's going to be wrong. And then A focuses on how genes control human development. Nothing about the telomerase or the cells or anything. So just through process of elimination, it looks like it has to be D. Does that make sense? You know, you just have to kind of be careful here. You don't want to rush into anything, but keep in mind, on the TOEFL, you cannot skip questions on the listening, which is kind of a pain in the ass. The professor discusses research about the percentage of a chromosome's DNA that contains genetic information. How did she feel? She was amazed. She was amazed, right? So B. What does the professor say about the DNA in a telomere? It's meaningless, and it's also kind of like protection, right? It's meaningless and it's protection. So I think she said it is genetically meaningless, right? And it does have, so D is a trap answer. Does it have a function? Yes or no? Yes, it does. The function is protection, right? Can I explain D? And she thought it was unnecessary. Do we have any evidence that she thought it was unnecessary? Pallavi? Did she ever say, this research was useless? I don't know why they did it. I'm very confused why they did this research. No, they never said that, right? Number 9, why does the professor mention shoelaces? Obviously, to talk about the function of telomeres, right? To make it easier to understand, to explain, to illustrate. Yeah, it's going to be C. To describe the coiled shape. Yeah, to illustrate how chromosomes are protected from damage. And obviously, you can focus on the word illustrate too, because doesn't that mean example? Doesn't that mean example? So that can kind of help you. What does the professor imply about the length of a telomere? You can use the length to predict the life. So the longer, the more likely it is to divide longer. All right, so let's see. Yeah, longer telomeres allow the cell to divide more times. Yeah, A. And then finally, according to the professor, how is the chemical telomerase related to the telomere? Telomerase can rebuild, right? It can rebuild. So it looks like it's going to be B. None of these questions are very technical. You know, keep that in mind. You don't have to be a biologist. Okay? Does that make sense, everybody? Any questions? All right, let's go do the opera passage, and then we'll talk about the speaking. Here's my speaking guy right here. But let's go ahead and talk about the opera passage. It seemed like that gave you guys some trouble. So I'm not going to stop it. I'm just going to play it nonstop, and then you can look at my notes. I'll try to make the notes as organized as possible. All right, here we go.
Listen to part of a lecture in a music history class. The professor has been discussing opera.
The word opera means work. Actually, it means works. It's the plural of the word opus from the Latin. And in Italian, it refers in general to works of art. Opera lyrica, or lyric opera, refers to what we think of as opera, the musical drama. Opera was commonplace in Italy for almost 1,000 years before it became commercial as a venture. And during those years, several things happened, primarily linguistic or thematic, and both involving secularization. Musical drama started in the churches. It was an educational tool. It was used primarily as a vehicle for teaching religion and was generally presented in Latin, the language of the Christian Church, which had considerable influence in Italy at that time. But the language of everyday life was evolving in Europe, and at a certain point in the Middle Ages, it was really only merchants, aristocrats, and clergy who could deal with Latin. The vast majority of the population used their own regional vernacular in all aspects of their lives. And so, in what is now Italy, operas quit being presented in Latin and started being presented in Italian. And once that happened, the themes of the opera presentations also started to change, and musical drama moved from the church to the plaza right outside the church. And the themes changed, and opera was no longer about teaching religion, as it was about satire, and about expressing the ideas of society or government without committing yourself to writing and risking imprisonment or persecution, or what have you. Opera, as we think of it, is, of course, a resurrected form. It is the melodious drama of ancient Greek theater. The term melodious drama being shortened eventually to melodrama, because operas frequently are melodramatic, not to say unrealistic. And the group that put the first operas together that we have, today even, it was a group of men that included Galileo's father, Vincenzo. And they met in Florence, he and a group of friends of the Count of Bardi, and they formed what is called the Camerata dei Bardi. And they took classical theater and reproduced it in the Renaissance time. This produced some of the operas that we have today. Now, what happened in the following centuries is very simple. Opera originated in Italy, but was not confined to Italy any more than Italians were. And so, as Italians migrated across Europe, they carried theater with them, and opera specifically because it was an Italian form. What happened is that the major divide in opera that endures today took place. The French said opera ought to reflect the rhythm and cadence of dramatic literature, bearing in mind that we're talking about the golden age in French literature. And so the music was secondary, if you will, to the dramatic cadence of language, to the way the rhythm of language was used to express feeling and used to add drama. And of course, as a result, instead of arias or solos, which would come to dominate Italian opera, the French relied on what the Italians called recitativo, or recitative in English. The lyrics were spoken, frequently to the accompaniment of a harpsichord. The French said, you really can't talk about real people who lived in opera, and they relied on mythology to give them their characters and their plots. Mythology, the pastoral traditions, the novels of chivalry or the epics of chivalry out of the Middle Ages. The Italians said, no, this is a great historical tool, and what better way to educate the public about Nero or Attila or any number of people than to put them into a play they can see and listen to. The English appropriated opera after the French. Opera came late to England because all theaters, public theaters, were closed, of course, during their Civil War. And it wasn't until the Restoration in 1660 that public theaters again opened and opera took off. The English made a major adjustment to opera and exported what they had done to opera back to Italy, so that you have this circle of musical influences. The Italians invented opera, the French adapted it, the English adopted it, the Italians took it back. It came to America late and was considered too elitist for the general public, but Broadway musicals fulfilled a similar function for a great long while. John J. Chapman wrote about opera, quote, "If an extraterrestrial being were to appear before us and say, 'What is your society like? What is this earth thing all about?' you could do worse than take that creature to an opera." End quote. Because opera does, after all, begin with a man and a woman and an...
The reason you guys had trouble with this was all the Italian words and stuff like that, right? The names and all that. The technical words, things like that. Am I right? Those of you who claim it's boring, remember that's not a valid complaint. The reason you're taking the TOEFL is not to have fun on a Sunday afternoon at the park. The reason you're taking it is to go get your master's or PhD. So very boring is not a valid criticism. However, a valid criticism is it had a lot of technical words. If you actually look at it, did I write down any technical words? I didn't write down any technical words at all. So anytime they said the Italian or anytime they said any like names or anything, I didn't write it down. Just write down the differences. So you got the French, you got the Italians, you got the English, and got the Americans. Okay, let's go ahead and look at these questions. All right, let me see if I can find them. All right, opera, music, history. Give me 1 second, guys. I got to move the questions over. You guys surprised me with this one. Okay, new slide. Copy. Okay, so there's the first set of questions. And oh, we have 2 listen agains. Okay. Well, the 2 listens again should make it a little bit easier, right? All right, here we go. Let's take a look. What is the lecture mainly about? Okay, use POE. French and Italian opera did not survive. What? Okay. All right. Some changes that took place. We know that's true. Differences between opera and other forms of music. Italy's... No. They didn't talk about differences between opera and other forms of music. Right? They talked about Italy spreading opera, right? Spreading opera. So it looks like it has to be A and C. So even though the lecture was hard, is this question hard? I don't think so, right? According to the professor, what happened after the Italian language replaced Latin? So go back to my notes here. Okay, so when it became Italian, the themes changed. It became satire and government. Operas became longer. No. Music and opera became more. No. Opera was used to teach the... No, that's the opposite. So the correct answer has to be B. Operas began to express secular ideas. Of course, what does secular mean, everybody? Secular means religious. Opposite of religious. It means not religious. All right, 25. Why does the professor mention ancient Greek theater? Because this was kind of the inspiration, the melodrama, right? Doesn't he say that? They were trying to reproduce this idea, the melodrama right here, all of that stuff. To give an example of a culture that what? The Greeks came after the Italians? What? Okay. To describe the type of setting in which opera, the type of setting? To explain how opera was introduced into French? What are you talking about? Correct answer is C. To point out a precursor. Right? To point out a precursor of opera. What does the professor say about music and French opera? So what does it say about the French? It says it was like literature. The music was less important than the literature. It was spoken. It focused on mythology, things like that. It was secondary to the rhythmic flow. Yes, it's D. Right? It was secondary, not as important as language. And then now let's listen to track 108.
Why does the professor say this?
The English made a major adjustment to opera and exported what they had done to opera back.
So basically he just said the English did this and then gave it back to Italy, right? So he's obviously not discussing the popularity. He's not saying that they work together, right? He's not showing differences. So doesn't it just have to be to give one instance of the evolution? Yeah, okay. Now, Shubham says, why is B wrong? Do we know that opera inspired the French novelist, or do we know that the French novelist inspired opera? Aha. Think about the order. Think about the order. I believe French opera was kind of inspired by the literature people. Not the literature people were inspired by opera. All right? And then last one, listen to track 109.
What does the professor imply when he says this?
John J. Chapman wrote about opera, quote, "If an extraterrestrial being were to appear before us and say, 'What is your society like? What is this Earth thing all about?' you could do worse than take that creature to an opera." End quote. Because opera does, after all, begin with a man and a woman and an emotion.
When an author uses a quote, doesn't the author use that to support his idea? So doesn't he kind of agree here? So let's look at the wrong answers. He thinks Chapman's questions are difficult to answer. He never says that. He's concerned. He thinks it's confusing. No. So the only thing has to be A, P-O-E. So do I think the lecture was confusing? Yes. Do I think the questions were hard? Not really. I don't think the questions were that hard. You know, just make sure you're not writing down a bunch of detail that is impossible to spell and stuff like that. All right, any questions? Hey, Jamie, question?
Hey, Greg, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Can you go back to 26?
Sure. Oh, 26, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get D. Why it's D?
Well, if you look at my notes I took, you'll see that under French, I wrote music is less than literature, and I wrote spoken. So what did they really focus on, the music or the language?
The literature?
Yeah, they focused a lot on the language, and they kind of ignored the music a little bit. So look, it was secondary. First of all, what is it?
French people?
Is that what it says? Read the question. You're saying French people were...
Opera.
No?
Music?
Yeah, it's the music. So how did the French feel about music? Not as important as the language, right?
Okay, and what does B say?
Sorry?
What does option B say?
B says that the music inspired the French novelist. Is that true?
No, they were inspired by.
Exactly. See the difference?
Okay, yeah.
So that's active voice, passive voice.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Dana.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yep. Hey, Dana.
Hello. I just want to ask you one thing. Like, in this particular one, I didn't have any problems, but let's say like at the beginning, you cannot miss, in order to answer the first question, you cannot miss at all the fact that they say it's a musical drama, that it transformed later on into theater. But at first it was in music. It had to do with the music. If you miss on that, you cannot answer the first question. But the fact that you didn't write anything about Galileo's dad. And
Why would I? Yeah, they would never.
How do you know that they're not going to ask a question about that? How did you know that they're not going to say something about that?
Can you honestly expect a person learning English to spell Galileo?
No,
under pressure?
But something about let's say like they did a theater in the Renaissance period and they had something to do. I don't know. Who knows what they're going to ask?
I know. That would be very strange.
You know, but I don't know.
Yeah, that would be very strange to ask something that specific. It's just way too specific. It's way too specific. You know, mentioning Galileo. Like, first of all, I don't even know how to spell Galileo half the time. And you're asking like...
So I wrote them down and then I saw that you skipped it. And then I wanted to ask you, well, how did you know that they're not going to ask it?
I mean, can you imagine like a non-native speaker just like Galileo, right? I mean, it's a distraction technique. That's all it is. They're just trying to distract you.
Okay. So this is it. I didn't have a hard time with this text. I had a hard time with the subject that I don't know.
No, you had a hard time with your approach. Your approach was an overemphasis on detail. That's the main problem. Yeah, so this is no different than reading strategies that we see in GRE or reading strategies that we see in the TOEFL. An overemphasis on detail is going to hurt you very bad. It's going to hurt you very bad. Okay? Try to get the main ideas if you can. Should we not make notes of complex stuff? You can make notes of complex stuff in a simplified manner, but also keep in mind it's mostly about structure. Linguistics, thematically, right? And notice he actually mapped out the structure. Remember how the professor in the beginning said, you know, it changed in two important ways, linguistically and thematically. Linguistically is all this stuff right here, is it not? And then thematically is all this stuff right here, is it not? I mean, the professor was more organized than you thought he was. He was a more organized dude, right? Okay. Let's go ahead and move on, everybody. Bottom line, with the listening, don't get too wrapped up in the detail. Get those main ideas, especially anything technical. You know, focus more on the ideas rather than the technical information. All right. Let's talk about speaking, everybody. First things first with speaking. Believe it or not, ETS literally tells you what they're looking for. It's kind of a secret. Most people don't know this. They actually tell you how to get a high score. It's called the speaking rubric. And I just learned something very cool the other day. I can now zoom in. So what exactly are they looking for? The general description means in general, kind of combining everything. What they're looking for is you actually answer the damn question. If I ask you if you prefer pizza or hot dogs and you talk about your favorite pet, you're going to get a 0. Okay? With at most minor lapses in completeness. If they ask you to give your opinion on something and instead you give Uncle Bob's opinion, you're going to get a 0. If they ask you to give reasons and examples and you give no examples, you're going to get a lower score. Everyone understand? So you have to complete the task. I think a lot of people have problems with this. Like it's human nature. Whenever I ask people in class questions, you'll notice I'll say, okay, just say yes or no. Just say yes or no. And then it's very difficult to follow directions for humans, including me. Do what they're asking you to do. I mean, in a personal statement, if they ask you to do 500 words, do 500 words. Here, if they ask you to give reasons and examples, give reasons and examples, more than one reason, more than one example. Basically, do that. Okay? Number 2, it is highly intelligible and exhibits sustained, coherent discourse. Can somebody rephrase that for me? What does that mean? It means a couple things. Number 1, every word you say is clear. Does that mean no accent? Does that mean accents are bad? Does that mean if you have an accent, you get a 0? Of course not. I got some sad news for you guys. You'll never get rid of your accent. You guys have heard me say Hindi names. I'm terrible at it. You'll never get rid of it, right? It's just not going to go away, right? But that doesn't mean you'll get a low score. It just means you have to work on other things like fluidity, not stopping. Sometimes I'll be teaching somebody and they apologize in the middle of the speaking. Like, I'm sorry. I can't do this. Obviously, that's bad. Don't do that. All right. Pronunciation of some key words that you can work on. You can't work on pronunciation of every word, but maybe some key words that you often say, like example, right? And then finally, coherent. What do they mean by coherent? Connected, logical. The first reason is. The second reason is, for example, you have to use those transitions. You're not writing a mystery novel, everybody. You're not writing a mystery novel. You have to make it clear what you're saying. You have to make it clear what you are saying. Doesn't this advice sound very similar to the advice I give in writing? This is very similar advice, right? Except the pronunciation. Okay. They then go into a little bit more of some specifics here. Delivery means you're speaking. Generally well-paced. Speech is clear. It may include minor lapses or minor difficulties with pronunciation or intonation patterns, which do not affect overall intelligibility. That's that one. Language use. What do you think this is? This is grammar, vocab usage, things of that nature. This response demonstrates effective use of grammar and vocab. It exhibits a fairly high degree of automaticity with good control of basic and complex structures, as appropriate. Some minor or systematic errors are noticeable but do not obscure meaning. Topic development. This is more about 2 reasons, 2 examples, things of that nature. Response is sustained and sufficient. It is generally well developed and coherent. For example, relationships between ideas are clear. For example, the first reason is, the second reason is, etc., etc. So guys, here's the secret. ETS tells you what they want, so just give it to them. Do they want grammar mistakes? No. Do they want vocab? Yes, but not crazy vocab. Do they want natural speech? Yes. Do they want grammar mistakes? No. Do they want 2 reasons and 2 examples? Yes, etc., etc. All right, let's go ahead and look at an example here. Number 1, task number 1. They're going to ask you a question. And they're going to say, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Let's say, let's use something stupid. Meat eating should be banned globally. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I imagine we have a lot of vegetarians in our on our audience. Welcome. And we probably have some carnivores as well. Welcome. The thing is, on the TOEFL, nobody really gives a shit about your idea. I mean, literally, nobody cares. I don't care if you're a vegetarian. Talk about meat eating should not be banned because it does not matter. The TOEFL test, is it an idea test or an English test? It's an English test. That's all it is. They're just measuring your ability to say English. Notice here, come back here. Do you see anything about strength of ideas or persuasiveness? Do you see that anywhere? Oh, the ideas must be persuasive, or like the ideas have to be strong. Does anybody see anything about that? Nothing at all. So what that means is, don't focus on having perfect ideas. Focus instead on choosing a side and giving a reason, giving an example, giving another reason, and giving another example. And if you ever have the thought, but Greg, what if my ideas are not very good? What if my ideas are not very strong? What should you do? Who cares? Right? Just say something, even if it's ridiculous. Like, for example, here, let me do an example here with kind of ridiculous ideas that would still get a perfect score. Okay. Let's go ahead and bring on the timer. Remember, you have 45 seconds for this question. Let me find my timer. Here we go. 1 second. Okay, can everyone see my timer right now? All right. So remember, I'm going to say words that are some ideas that are kind of stupid, but it doesn't matter. Okay, here we go. In my opinion, I think that meat eating should be banned globally for the following 2 reasons. First of all, I think humans have a lot to learn from animals. For example, maybe one day we'll learn how to fly from a bird. Maybe one day we'll learn how to eat grass from a cow. How do you know? It could happen, right? So that's why we shouldn't eat these, because we can definitely learn a lot. They're our teachers. The second reason why we should not eat animals is because they really are our best friends. For example, my Uncle Bob really loves his pet duck. It's his best friend. Whenever he's depressed, he talks to his pet duck, feels better. And that's why I think we should ban meat eating globally. So you see, these ideas are obviously stupid. So I'm using Uncle Bob and his relationship with a pet duck. I'm saying that humans can learn how to fly from birds. Pretty ridiculous ideas. The actual graders don't care. What they care about is, was the pronunciation good? Was the grammar good? Did they have 2 reasons? Did they choose a side? Did they have 2 examples? Etc., etc. Okay? Make sense, everybody? Alina has a question. Hey, Alina.
Yeah, hi, Greg. Could you please tell me, is it important to say in the end, summarizing, say again your opinion?
In 45 seconds, in 45 seconds, you just don't have enough time. So no, it's not important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, just finishing with example and that's it.
What is important is doing this, 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 this,
mm-hmm.
and this. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so do you think meat eating should be banned?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, give a reason.
Because meat is not good for human health.
Okay, stop. Don't over-explain.
Mm-hmm.
Remember? Because you only have 45 seconds. You only have 45 seconds, right? Give an example of why it's not good for humans.
People who eat meat more frequently has troubles with heart.
Okay, stop. Again, don't over-explain. Okay. What's the second reason?
Animals are tortured.
Okay, stop. Good. Yeah, stop. No, or nothing like that, right? Just say, oh, this
mm-hmm.
is very bad for the animals. And then you would give an example about that. Perfect. Don't over-explain. Get in, get out. Because again, 45 seconds is not that much time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I tried already before.
Okay, so that I think you did a good job, though. I think the 2 reasons are good. I think the 2 examples are good. I think you're on track to getting a high score.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Muslim Banu, I don't know if I'm saying your name right. Muslim Banu, how are you? You have to turn on your microphone.
Oh, am I audible now?
Yeah, how do you say your name?
Muslima.
Muslim. I was way off. I said Muslim Banu, and it's Muslim
Yeah, it
Bana.
has addition one. No, it's Muslima, just Muslima.
Oh, okay, okay. Go ahead. What's your question?
So I have that question. I can speak in English, but ideas do not come to my mind
Who
when
cares?
I hear the question.
That's my point. That's what my point. You need to break this habit. Who cares? On the TOEFL, it doesn't matter. Just talk nonsense. I mean, talk literal nonsense.
But for example, this meat eating should be banned globally. I have no idea. Like, you had 2 ideas at least, but I don't know anything.
Do you think it should or it should not? Okay, actually, let's say it should not. Okay, I don't care if you're a vegetarian or not, because again, it doesn't matter. Meat eating should not be banned. Give me a reason. It doesn't have to really make sense. Just give me a reason.
Meat may be beneficial for health.
There you go. Who knows, right? Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. And then you give an example that, oh yeah, protein's good for us, something like that, right? Give another example or give another reason.
Another reason.
Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it.
So meat shouldn't be banned.
Well, that's the opinion. You can't say the opinion twice.
It gives us energy.
There
maybe,
you go.
but
There you go.
it's
Yeah.
kind of-
It doesn't matter if it's crazy. You could say, oh, meat gives us energy. Even if it's similar to the first idea, it's better than saying nothing, right?
Okay.
Yeah. It's
So
just
we should always say 2 reasons, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Because remember, what are they looking for? They tell you what they're looking for. Aren't they looking for topic development?
No.
What do you mean, no? It's right here.
Yeah.
In the rubric,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
looking for topic development, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't really matter. You could even say that meat is delicious if you want to. On the GRE, would that work? We should not ban meat because it's delicious. No, on the GRE, that wouldn't work. It's not a persuasive idea. But on the TOEFL, it doesn't matter. Okay? All right, let's look at an actual TOEFL question, and we'll plan it together. So I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds to plan how you will organize this. All right, 30 seconds beginning now. Okay, bear in mind on the real TOEFL, you only have 15 seconds to prepare this, so I gave you a little bit of extra time. Can I have a volunteer how you would organize this? All right, let's go to Rohan. Hey, Rohan. Do you think family or friends?
Yeah, I'd go with friends.
Okay, give me 2 reasons why.
Will you start the timer or?
Oh, no. We're organizing right now.
Oh, okay, fine. I spend more time with.
Okay, more time. Again, remember, don't over-explain, right? Okay, example?
I spend a lot of time with friends in college.
Okay, give a number. Remember, example should be specific. How many hours a day?
I spend like 8 hours a day.
There you go, 8 hours. Okay, second reason?
There's a large age gap.
Between you and friends?
Oh, okay, fine. Oh, no, between my family.
Right, remember, you're talking about friends, so small age gap, right?
Oh, okay. So
remember,
I can't say something like...
You can, but it's better to say something that matches with friends, not something that matches with family, right?
Yeah,
so you would say, the second reason why friends are more influential is because there's a smaller age gap, something like that. Okay, and then the example would be, 1 to 2 years, whatever, right? Whereas with my mom, the age gap is 30 years or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, are you ready to speak it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so 45 seconds. You may begin speaking now.
Yeah. So in my opinion, I feel that friends are more influential on young adults, mainly for 2 reasons. Firstly, I feel that we spend more time with our friends. I spend like 8 to 10 hours with my friends in college. And secondly, I feel that there's a slightly larger age gap between me and my parents rather than with my friends. So I have an age gap of say 20 years with my dad and 25 with my mom. But with my friends, it's just around 1 year, 2 years. So I feel that they understand me better and I can connect with them better and, have more fun with them. So I think they would have more of an influence on me.
That would likely get a 4, a perfect score. Yeah, keep in mind when they give you a score on the speaking, it's a 0 to 4 scale that they later convert to the 30 scale. But what you did would get a 4. Do you have
I ran out of steam in 30 seconds itself.
You did fine. You did fine. You went through this one a little bit too quickly. You could maybe expand upon the example a little bit more, but to me, that was a 4. Do you have a small accent? Yes, you do, but we all do. I have an American accent. You have probably some South Asian accent, right? It doesn't matter. Everything you said was clear. Everything you said was intelligible. It was organized. It was good examples. The examples were specific. You were confident with your speech. The intonation was good. So it gets a 4.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Makes sense? Yeah, I'll let you guys in on a little bit of a secret. I've had a lot of Indian students. I don't know if you guys are from India or Bangladesh or Pakistan or that area. For the most part, you guys kind of kill the TOEFL. you guys kind of destroy the TOEFL. It's kind of like you take the TOEFL's lunch money in many cases. All right, let's go to Diana. Hey, Diana, question?
Hi, Greg. So 4 is the highest score for this?
Yeah, so what they do is they give a score for each question. So, how many speaking questions are there on the current TOEFL?
I think 2.
There's 4. There's 4 questions. So you're going to have basically 8 scores. 8 scores. So you're going to have a score from a computer for each question and a score from a human for each question.
All right. So the most important, what I understood, it's like you have to be also clear, right? So you have to understand your accent. That's the thing.
Yeah, but again, I understand your accent. My point is, don't be insecure. A lot of people get very insecure about their accent. That's not the problem. They're not saying don't have an accent. They're saying that when you talk, do people understand what you're saying? So everyone in the chat box, when Diana talks, do you understand her words? Yes or no? Okay, then don't overly focus on it, right? If people understand what you say, don't overly focus on it. Focus instead on grammar, organization, things like that.
All right. So in other words, you just have not to be shy. You just have
to don't be shy.
Right?
Yes, do not be shy, because being shy and insecure will kill a speaking score.
I agree. Yeah. And Greg, will we practice writing as well?
Yeah, we'll do writing after the speaking lessons. Yeah.
All right, good. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, let's do one more question here. Let's go to Amit. Hey, Amit, question?
Yeah. Hi, Greg.
Hey, how are you?
My first class. Yeah. Hi.
Oh, welcome.
Yeah. So actually, I also want to speak.
Oh, you want to try one? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't have any idea about that, how much I get that score, and I'm not. I don't have any idea about that TOEFLs.
Okay, much. So this is kind of your first experience with TOEFL?
Yes, that first, yeah.
Okay, so here,
first class also.
Let me write down the structure one more time. Okay, so you just choose a side. Okay, choose a side. All right. Then you give a reason why. Then you give an example. Then you give another reason, and then you give another example, and you have 45 seconds. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am ready.
All right, you may begin speaking now.
So yeah, so mostly I will go prefer for that my family members, because that I spent more time along with my family members from the childhood, and that I will learn that lot of the things. Which one is that I'm not able to learn from that in another part of that apart from that family, and apart from that most of the time my parents will giving me that advice, and most of the times that my parents will give that advice regarding for that learning, and
okay, no problem. So let me give you the advice. That would probably be A 3 would be my guess. And it's not really related to your speaking. It's not related to an accent issue or a grammar issue or a pronunciation issue, because again, everybody has their own accent. So to be honest, I don't even really care about accents, to be honest with you. The main problem was you had no organization. You were jumping from idea to idea to idea to idea to idea. We didn't know what we didn't know what the example was. We didn't know what the reason was. We just had no idea. So listen to how I speak this, okay? I want you to hear the phrases I use to tell you what I'm talking about, okay? In my opinion, what does that phrase tell you? If I say, even in the chat box, if I say in my opinion, doesn't that say I'm going to say the side, right? So in my opinion, I think friends are more influential for 2 reasons. Why did I say for 2 reasons? Doesn't that give structure and organization to what I'm about to speak? And then I say, first of all, why do I say first of all? What does first of all tell the listener? First reason, right? You say, first of all, I think friends are more important because. What does the word because tell the reader or the listener? It says, hey, here's the reason. And then I say, for example. So that's what you have to work on. You have to work on including those phrases to make your speech more organized. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, yeah.
All right, everybody, we're going to work more on this in our follow-up sessions. We're going to also talk about the integrated speaking questions. I will be giving you homework to practice this, okay? All right, everyone, have a wonderful day. Make sure you check the website for the homework or Discord, and I will be talking to you guys soon. Okay? Bye-bye, everybody.